I come home from work sometimes. I come home from my job. I had a hard day at the office, dealing with a bunch of rubber snakes. One of the kids is in the driveway. He's shooting skeet with my rifle. He has your mother's eyes. I think he should give them back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends and associates around town and around the globe. Here it is, the 30th of June in the year of our Lord 2016. That's 2016. This is Public Affairs, Public Access. I'm your host, Paul Colby. I join up with you guys and you gals every couple of months to talk about what's been going on, not just here, but everywhere. And everywhere includes a whole lot of places. You know, there are sites on the internet in this day and age that tell you they're giving you the stories, the inside information about or behind, or both, about or behind the fake news that's on mainstream media. This gathering that you're part of at this particular moment in time is a place and a time and a functional repository where we discuss the stories behind even those stories, where you get the real lowdown on what is going down everywhere. And you come away educated, enlightened, in some cases incensed, amused, or otherwise ingloriously disposed. But you thank me for it in the long run. I have a pile of letters at home, actual physical mail, snail mail, if you will, along with many, many emails saying thanks for letting us know the truth about the times in which we live. So, like every time we get together, we're going to cover a lot of ground, and we're going to start by celebrating the fact that summer is here. Yes, summer has been here for a few days already, and one thing you can say about summer here and elsewhere is that it's really hot. You know what I'm talking about? Even when you try to relax in Texas and in a lot of places out west and elsewhere across the globe, it just seems like you can't keep up with the heat. Almost all of your life at this juncture is air-conditioned if possible. So, how hot is it? That's the question that used to be asked on TV and other places. You know, they would say in that context that it's hot enough to fry an egg on the sidewalk. And I'm sure that since it's been in the 120s in Phoenix lately, people could do that if they wanted. But most people don't know that science has already gone further in analyzing what you can cook on a sidewalk, because these days we're conscious of global warming. Are we not? I refer you to a study. This is a study by Schmeck Woodall and Largo Foote, who are in the Facilities Maintenance Study Group at Black Hole University. They have been charting what you can cook on the sidewalk in real time and projecting it into the future, where we have a warmer set of sidewalks to work with. So for a few years already, it's been possible to do eggs and nachos and even baked potatoes on the sidewalk. Last year, they added in bacon and French fries and burgers, which I imagine if your neighborhood is like mine, you've seen people doing this already. By 2018, which is not that far away, you'll be able to work on caribou if you like to grill caribou. Or by 2020, they say a small herd of cattle could be cooked on a sidewalk. But, you know, really, people don't like cooking on the sidewalk as much as they like cooking out in summer. I know I I really enjoy cooking out, and like most of you, I enjoy it so much that I'm having to build a warehouse next to the place here that I live to store all of my, grilling supplies. And that includes, the barbecue sauce, the charcoal, the beer, lighter fluid, heavier fluid, napkins, spoons, pictures of all-time great grillers, boom boxes, fire extinguishers, whatever. It takes a lot of space to have all of your grilling equipment right there at the ready when you're ready to cook. And for the most part, over the last many decades, what people have done with their grills is grill meat. But that is changing a little bit, and the reason why is meat is becoming very expensive. To illustrate, this is from a local grocery store, some weekly specials that I was looking at the other day. This is just off the map, to tell you the truth. This is off the map. If you have the kind of taste that most people do and you want something other than artichoke balls or shrimp brains, you're paying through the nose to get it. And there's some reasons for this. Why is meat becoming so expensive? Well, there's two or three things. For one thing, a lot of grocery stores, and you've probably noticed this, are now starting to use 3D printers so that they actually don't have to keep meat in stock. They simply print up whatever you ask them for. But it's pricey to do it that way. That's one reason things are going up. There's also been a cattle strike in parts of the western United States, and the cattle strike has obviously raised prices. A lot of people have been ordering meat from Amazon for a few years. What they didn't realize was that the meat they're ordering on Amazon is actually coming from the Amazon, and the shipping charges, well, you can see why things have gotten a little expensive if you're a carnivore. A lot of people are moving to alternative things to grill in their summer experience. And that includes, for people who get a lot of junk mail, many have found that with the proper marinade, and it might take a few days of marinating, you can do something with the junk mail, but more people are turning to things like tofu. You remember the biblical verse that many are thawed, but tofu are frozen. So I'm seeing a lot of that lately, and seafood has always been sort of a backup. Your 50-pound striped fighting bass have always been part of the grill. But now people are turning to slimier things like jellyfish because of the high protein content and the taste. But it's tricky, really tricky, if you haven't grilled it before. And if you're thinking of trying out some jellyfish or similar slimy things, I recommend the book by Tricia Boots that tells you how to get those slimy things onto your grill. And it says made easy, but it's still not easy, but I will say it's worth it. Now, in addition to these things that are eaten, cookouts always have something to drink, and in addition to the regular beer and other margarita-type boozes, people are starting to drink a lot more charcola, which is pretty explosive stuff. Up until recently, you never saw charcola. I understand it comes from around here, but there just wasn't any. And so I was wondering, I asked my staff to do some research because nobody seemed to know where this stuff came from out of the blue. Well, there is a study. I'm not saying this is ironclad, but I'm speculating. You may have noticed in the Journal of Applied Science just recently, last year, but that's recent, an article about the proposed uses for fracking of wastewater. Milton Trolleybutt was the main person responsible for that, and he's in the College of Rhetorical Fantasy, where a lot of these things that we see on the grocery shelves have first been talked about. So you put 2 and 2 together and see if you get 4. Anyway, hurricane season, that's another part of the summer. Tropical storms. And every time we have a tropical storm season, people talk about how we name the darn things. And this year, there was a proposal. It didn't get very much traction, but there was a proposal that we name the hurricanes after failed Republican presidential candidates, because after all, we had about 16 of them, and you rarely have more than 16 hot dog and tropical storms. You know what I'm saying? That didn't come to pass. However, there is another idea out there that is also not getting traction, and that involves naming tropical storms after bacteria. There's a published work on this. You may have seen it, called Honoring Bacteria, and it's a proposal to name not only hurricanes but also highways after some of these little guys. The issue is that so many of these things have Latin names and so many syllables that it's just not practical to name a hurricane with, you know, some of these long-winded descriptions that are part of the bacterial nomenclature. You see what I mean? You may also have noticed, ladies and gentlemen, that fantasy football type operations are the target of some attorneys generals' plans for moving things into court, because they see this fantasy football as nothing more than gambling. But for people who just can't gamble enough, there seems to be a new avenue where the odds makers are busy, and that is in terms of these hurricanes. The likelihood that a hurricane is going to strike where you are, don't we have a chart on? Yeah. For example, right now, the chances of Hurricane Cruz, this is important to me, hitting the Isle of Man, that's 20 to 1 odds. I have some money on that right now, and frankly, I doubt that they're going to hit Mount Rushmore, these hurricane winds, but hey, it's worth, you know, a couple of dollars if it's 75 to 1. So there you go. Tropical storms. I know a lot of you have your maps out and you're following every one. But another thing that goes with summer, going to the beach. And Texas has a lot of beaches. Not very many of them are pristine beaches, but we do have some. And you may not know that the state puts out every week a Texas Beach Population Weekly Report. And this covers not only the human population of the beaches, but also, for example, the other kinds of things present at the beaches. And one thing you may have noticed is that there's a warning for Galveston Beach, right down the road from us, Enterococcus warning, to be specific. And this is a kind of bacteria that, according to the stories that you're reading, this is present in the Galveston Bay Gulf waters because the heavy rains have somehow pushed the this bacteria, this dangerous bacteria, into the Gulf. Now, my researchers think that's not the whole story, because apparently these hostile bacteria, and pretty ferocious, they're not flesh-eating, but they do like fingernails, they've been kicked out of the Atlantic after some flurries with mud sharks and stuff. They've come down here, but bottom and top of the story is this, as mentioned by someone in the Freeport Fire Department, swimming in the Texas beaches around here right now is like swimming in a toilet. Now, that doesn't keep people from having fun if they really want to have fun. And in fact, if you want to go down to the beach, you want to romp in the water and everything else, you can still do that, but you just might consider protecting yourself. Like the slogan a lot of people who are renting things these days in the way of beachwear is "shut up and groove," because if you put yourself in the right kind of suit, then you're not going to be letting the bacteria spoil your fun while you're at the beach. And not only that, you probably will worry less about getting a suntan, you know, because you're completely covered. And these deep sea diving suits, these days they come in see-through type and other fashion conscious variations, so you don't have to sacrifice looking good for being interred, as it were. There's even a market, I understand, for converted phone booths, because nobody uses phone booths anymore. So a lot of these are being turned into, well, protective garments, if you like. The beach. The beach. That's not the only place you go in the summer. You also, if you're like most people, are looking forward to some big rock and roll concerts. Now, you know, later this year there's going to be one out in the California desert that has guests like Paul McCartney and Neil Young and The Who. Well, that's pretty big stuff and probably pretty darned expensive. A lot of people, though, have latched on to another big festival event that's coming real soon. And this one involves a whole bunch of people who are, how shall we put this, they're deceased. But there are some pretty big names there. I'm sure you recognize a lot of these people: Frank Zappa, Janis Joplin, John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix, out there at the Bennington Fairgrounds in Arizona. And what the promoters say, they say that you won't actually be able to see these acts. You won't see them, but you can hear them. Now, to me, that sounds pretty flaky and possibly fake, because I mean, if I took my iPod out there and hooked it up to a big speaker system, I'm sure I could play some of the hits from all of these people and pretend like they were there. Well, you know, but there's suckers born every minute. So anyway, if you're going out there, be aware that it's pretty expensive. And also, I've been to the site to look it over. I can tell you that there are very few porta-cans. In fact, I only saw one porta-can on the entire site. So the promoters are also saying, go before the show. And I think you know what they're talking about there. Anyway, one last thing about summer, of course, fireworks. We're coming up on 4th of July, and so we'll have fireworks as usual, but there is a twist this year in the many communities across America where fracking has been going hog wild. This year, people are talking about just lighting the water because, you know, it'll fire up, and you save money on firecrackers and things like that. And here's another possible entertainment. We might get some fireworks from way across the water. I mean from Korea, because Kim Jong the Unsuitable, he has a lot of non-functional nuclear weapons. Well, not a lot. He wanted to have a lot, but he does have a lot of duds, and he has some funky delivery systems that he was promising a big display across these United States. Now he's kind of called it back a little bit, but he says if you live on the West Coast and have a pretty high-powered telescope, you'll probably be able to see his 4th of July surprise, whatever that's supposed to mean. Anyway, let's be realistic. The biggest fireworks, and this is a segue, by the way, that's what that's called in the business here. The biggest fireworks this year are going to be at the Republican and Democratic conventions, and that show has been getting sillier by the minute. I mean silly by the minute. So on the one hand, you've got Donald Trump and the Republicans up to their usual stuff, what by usual stuff I mean that the Republicans are always promoting things that are slightly retrograde, and now they have somebody who is not only retrograde but occasionally off the reservation completely. You know what I'm saying? But what's been going on lately is that Mr. Donald Trump is trying to repackage himself and improve his image. One thing that's just gone down, you probably noticed, was that he fired his lead guitarist. And at least that's what the news story said. As far my information is, they actually fired his entire band because what they were doing was not inspiring as many people as it was supposed to be. And you know, it's important to have campaign theme songs. Every campaign has them. Donald tried to use, or did use, until he was told not to, songs by people like, the Rolling Stones and Elton John and Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, Neil Young even, Everlast, Twisted Sister. He was using a bunch of people's songs, REM, and they said, stop it. Just stop using our songs. So this new guitarist and group, I believe, is coming in to try to spruce things up and get him back on track. Now, I was able to acquire recently a recording. I am not sure if this is the lead guitarist that got fired, or if this is the new band that's working on songs. But there is a new tune. I think it's called "Wreck the Country," and "Wreck the Country" is something. Don't we have that audio for the people to hear? I'm gonna wreck this country if it takes me all night and day. Oh! Wait a minute now. Stop. I forgot the next line. Let's do it again. Like I say, I don't know if that was the old guitar player or the new one, but it is catchy. I'm gonna wreck. Anyway, it's catchy, but I think Donald wants to have more ammunition, so he's also working to get some, romantic type ballad material that he can use for theme songs, and that, that involves love stories. The people that love him, he does mention all the time how loved he is. We've got another rehearsal tape. Apparently the band is not on this one, and I don't know the singer's name. She is new to the campaign, but have a listen to this one here. I think this is called Mexican Love, or The Mexicans Love Me.
Loves me, including the Mexicans and the Jews and all the people in Texas. And I forgot the next line. What was it?
Oh, and also there, a lot of the campaigns are thinking of having the dogs be part of it. That's going around too. Anyway, in addition to a campaign theme song, Donald is already starting to look for vice presidential timber, because he's got to make that decision pretty soon. He has been paying attention to what's going on Broadway, and Hamilton is the talk of, well, for years I can't remember anything that was politically based that's been that talked about. So the original idea from the Donald himself was, let's get this Hamilton guy on board for VP because he's very popular, but some of his advisors have suggested to Donald, that the country is not yet ready for a dead person as vice president, and it seems like we've crossed that bridge before. Anyway, that being said, there was a story that leaked out in May about a possible short list, and it was said that Carly might be on, according to Donald Trump's boat and some other source, Carly might be on this list. And now a lot of people think they knew right away who that meant, but I'm not sure that it's that clear. Now, you have probably noticed that one thing that's happened more than usual in these last years is that people are considering changing their orientation. You have Bruce Jenner and more lately Richard Simmons, but in this case, it appears that somebody named Rove is thinking about doing a change of orientation and picking up that name Carly. So I don't know if that's going to work out or not, but it is certainly highly interesting, don't you think? It's highly interesting. Now, of course, those are not the only vice presidential candidates. I mean, just about everybody who has taken a stab at the big job is still sort of in the running, and most of the people at that big Bennington Fairgrounds concert were being considered, but for reasons that we've discussed are not in it anymore. But some of the academics that wrote these important papers on global warming not being real, they're being considered right now. Donald does have, though, an image problem. He has a problem with approval. And you've seen a lot of charts, but here's some of the latest information that's just come down. On the survey questions that have come out recently are probing people's actual deep-seated psychological construct type of a belief. For example, what most appeals to you was a set of questions here, and one of the questions is discussing hairstyles with Trump. But at the top of the list here, milking an unfriendly cow came out 24% of the people, and some even want to have a beer with George Bush. But I can tell you from personal experience, this is kind of a sidelight, but when you milk an unfriendly cow, it can turn out to be a pretty rewarding experience. So you wouldn't rule that out. But anyway, Donald and grilling jellyfish, how about that? That's pretty topical considering what we've just been looking at. I'm surprised about people going back to high school, except that I suppose that goes with the whole mystique of the Trump campaign, the idea of going back to either Trump University or to high school. But actually discussing things with Donald is kind of way at the bottom of the list. I'm never amazed anymore. I had another piece of data here that's probably pretty sensitive. I shouldn't show you this, but I can show you another recent poll that talks about presidential approval ratings specifically. We've got that right here? Yes, and as you can see, right now, if the election were being held, it's Bernie Sanders who's leading the pack, and somebody named Sandra Bernies is right up there with him, almost. Together, they've pretty much got 50% of the vote. Isn't that something? Surprising. Now, Hillary Clinton is doing a little bit better than Donald Trump. Now, she's not doing very well herself, but we'll get to Hillary later. Donald Trump is just barely hanging in there with 10%, and even Dick Cheney got 1% of the vote, and I don't think he's even running. And he's running on the basis of name recognition because he has a sort of a famous name. I don't know if he's a member of that other duck ensemble that we've heard so much about. I think he was originally part of the Mud Sharks, which is a rock and roll group that wanted to be Donald's backing band, and they got turned down. Anyway, in light of these bad approval ratings and in light of problems with not having the running mate lined up and not even having a campaign song nailed down, well, there's been a lot of strategy meetings going on in Trump headquarters, and we came across some memos just recently we're looking them over right now that are highly instructive. They explain a whole lot about what's going on behind the scenes here. Now, the first thing that we have found is that Donald is apparently he's thinking about getting his convention really remote from protesters, and this is the sort of thing that's happened before. It's not exactly news, but the National Security Agency, as I have a source there, they provided us a copy of this surveillance photograph, which shows a very small protected area out on a lake, and we think this is Lake America Great Again, which is out in Vermont somewhere. This is a lake which has been completely cleaned up because it had been overrun by jellyfish, and most of these jellyfish, of course, now are being sold in your grocery stores for your grill and so forth. But there is also some dangerous bacteria, I am told, in these waters in that lake. Anyway, he's going to keep the protesters at bay. That's the issue here. He's apparently trying to keep certain members of the Republican Party, some of the delegates, pretty far away also, which is strange. We have a memo here on the letterhead of the Trump for President, regardless of the consequences campaign. And this is suggesting to people that the convention is going to be moved from Cleveland to the Trump Dump Hotel, which is in Hubert, Connecticut. I've been there once. It's great, but the room service leaves something to be desired. For example, I couldn't even get a bottle of Charcola after 10 o'clock. I mean, they said they ran out, but I'm not sure that's it at all. Anyway, like I said, he's trying to move them around, and just the other night we got some additional information here. It's from somebody in the Enterocaucus. Why does that sound familiar? Enterocaucus. Anyway, what we got from the Enterocaucus was a new bulletin, and this one shows that the campaign headquarters is being moved to the desert, sort of the desert, to the headquarters at the Bennington Fairgrounds in Tucson. And, well, I don't know. It just looks to me, like Donald is running away from some of the members of his own party. He's trying to herd delegates into very unfamiliar places, and it sounds awfully, to me it's very suspicious what's going on. And I'm sure we don't know the whole story, but there you have at least something to go on. Now, that's enough about Trump and the Republicans. Let's talk about the Democrats for a minute. Everybody thinks, or a lot of people think, that Hillary Clinton is the presumptive nominee. I don't happen to think so. This is, Donald Trump says a lot of things, but every now and then he'll say something that turns out to be right. And one thing that I agree with him on, he said Bernie Sanders has been getting screwed by the Democrats this year. I think that's true, and there's election fraud. Now, for those of you who have not been following this closely, that would be people whose only source of news is mainstream media, and that's not very many of you out here in my audience, but let's just talk about this for a minute. The telltale proof, among other items this year discussing election fraud, is this mysterious case of exit polls that are so far off from reported results in at least 12 contests that it is virtually mathematically impossible that Bernie Sanders had the vote that he did based on what these exit polls said. And because many people know this, they've been checking these stories on the internet, they know that the mass media canceled all the exit polls in that last Tuesday, which included the big California contest. But a private firm, a couple of private firms did exit polls anyway, and it's not surprising what they showed. They showed that Bernie Sanders was running away with the California primary. Well, I certainly think that there's something to this. And as you know, the votes in California are still being counted. Yes, they're still being counted. But on the side of Hillary Clinton and the Democratic elite who have been badgered about this question of the exit polls, there are now some answers coming out. Their side of the story is pretty fishy. It's pretty fishy. First thing they say is, in a lot of these polling places, people were confused about the entrance and the exit, and so they actually left by the entrance, and that there were entrance polls being taken, and that in the entrance polls, Hillary Clinton won 70% to 30%. Do you believe that? I have my doubts. In fact, I doubt that many people would be confused about what the entrance was and what the exit purported to be. But they have another line of argument. They say the reason Sanders got 65% of the vote in the exit polls was because people were asked the wrong question. They were asked who was the man in this particular primary, and most of them, at least 65% of them, said it was Bernie Sanders. Anyway, let alone what goes down with these exit polls, it's pretty clear that something fishy has been going on at more than a few of the Democratic primaries, and now we know why. This is a National Security Agency photo. What does it tell you? You look at it for a minute. Looks like a polling place, doesn't it? Well, that is exactly what's going on here. People have been sent to polling places that are not actually polling places. Do you get what I'm saying? We have here, and I told you we just got this from people in the Intero caucus, we have a sample of some of the letters that were sent to delegates, Democratic voters in various primaries. Here in California, let me explain. Precinct 211, according to one of these documents, Precinct 211 is now being moved to the sporting goods department at Walmart on Salvation Boulevard. Isn't that interesting? Precinct 247, according to another letter to voters, is now being moved to the abandoned post office on Tofu Parkway. Interesting. Precinct 319, according to letters to other California voters, is now moved to the restroom at the Chevron station on Mulholland Boulevard. So, you can see that in the cases where people actually went and know that they voted for Bernie Sanders, they actually were not at a polling place. Is it starting to make sense to you folks? Do you see what we were up against, the Bernie supporters that I know? Well, it's pretty clear to me, I'll tell you that. Let's look at an area that Bernie Sanders decided not to talk about, and that's emails. He said he wasn't going to discuss Hillary's emails because everybody was tired of the damn emails. But we got some of the emails, and they're pretty illuminating. Here's one to the to Debbie Washerwoman. I think we know who that is, and it's about what's his name. It says that an antique populace wants a piece of the cheeseburger, which is interesting wording. I haven't heard that before. Anyway, they're suggesting that the debate should be late at night because he doesn't stay up late. Here's another email that really bugs me. I'm surprised you don't see this on national TV. It's to some athletic supporters, i.e. that is some folks at Monsanto who are super delegates apparently. And it says, I can only get a few of you a campaign job, but dadgummit, I'd like to. And even though I appreciate the money, it's not going to affect any of my decisions. Well, I guess that was meant to be discovered, huh? Here's another one really irritating me, and this one is addressed to Big Boy. We don't know who Big Boy is, but his email address is hotshot@votefixer.com. Votefixer.com. And this concerns Vibrio bacteria. You may remember that we were talking about that earlier. And here again, a piece of the cheeseburger is mentioned, and grilling jellyfish. So I'm beginning to wonder if what they put in people's jellyfish didn't give some voters some kind of brain fog, want to call it that, where they don't even remember who they voted for. Maybe I'm sounding too conspiratorial for you guys now. So let's just get back to the straight up stuff that I know you can believe. First of all, the signage is going to be an issue here, just like it is for Donald. I mean, the idea is to isolate the protesters, and the first thing you do is you make sure that there are not going to be any signs with nasty wording. The only sign I know of that's approved so far is this one. I'm sure there'll be more like it to come soon. And as for the protesters to the Democratic Party's convention, they're going to not only be hidden away, they're going to be downstairs, they're going to be underground so that they can't make too much noise, and all those cameras up on the street aren't even going to see them. And it looks like they're going to be herded in there like cattle. Well, you know how that goes. You know how that goes. You know, Hillary is also looking for the right campaign theme song, because one thing you can say about Bernie's campaign, people were impassioned. People don't look that excited when they show up at a small high school gym to pledge their support to Hillary. So she's looking for some songs that maybe will thrill the masses. We've got a couple of them, don't we, here, that people can hear? I don't know the group, but one of them's called It's My Turn.
It's my turn. No massive grassroots moment is gonna screw things up for me.
Nothing's going to screw it up for me. So that that goes along with...
My dog is just howling for a Clinton presidency. Ow! Ow! Ow!
Once again, going for the dog vote. So that tells you the dog, well, I guess the entire mammal vote is going to be important this year, because I have something here I've been hesitant to show you. I have, and it's top secret, I'm not supposed to show anybody, but apparently even the jellyfish vote is being courted this year, because it turns out the jellyfish are highly intelligent, and they have been registered to vote in lots of places. Before I leave this subject of Hillary's campaign, she's got approval problems just like Donald Trump has approval problems. Here, would you trust Hillary is one of the latest theme polls that I've been looking at to gauge the public's opinion, and I was impressed by this first question. Would you trust her to mow the yard? Well, the backyard maybe, but not the front yard. You see? Now that's an insightful question. Would you trust her to jail Wall Street criminals? I don't think so. To act like a Democrat? Not after she's elected. Not if she's not if she's elected. So there you have it. A lot of people are so distressed by this, by the two major parties presenting to the public two candidates that are underwater on approval ratings. They're thinking in terms of third parties. And and usually that's a risky proposition. It's just going to dilute votes, you know, that would otherwise go to the major parties. But people are definitely looking at it this year. And some of those parties, in case you're starting to look in that direction, okay, there's the Green with Envy Party. You may have heard of them. They are heavily into decorating the environment, which I suppose is similar to protecting it. They are in favor of rooster money being used instead of what comes from the Federal Reserve Board, and they want aliens in charge of our homeschooling. Homeschooling, so that people can really be ahead of the curve. And they don't say curve; they say ahead of the curb, whatever that means. And anyway, their party this year is headed by Schmeck Vudau. We mentioned him before, and his book "Making America Green Again" pretty much says what they need to say. Then there's the former libertarians. Sometimes they're called the After Party, and what they have to offer you is up there on Tricia Booth's website. We heard about, you know, Tricia Booth. She wrote the manual for grilling jellyfish. Her website, shutupandgroove.com, has a lot of the particulars about the former libertarians. And then you can never rule out the almost vegetarians. They're almost vegetarian because they mostly don't eat meat, except for some bacteria that is prevalent in the Gulf Coast region. Now, a lot of the members of the almost vegetarian policy are also members of the National Raffle Association. The Raffle Association, according to some people, wants to give the country away, but it's not clear who they want to give it to. And there's also a lot of people who are pretty militaristic that have recently joined that party. Some would say infiltrated that party, because their slogan for this election year is "Bullets, not ballots." So if you're thinking in terms of of one of those fringe parties, then I'm certainly not going to stop you. I'm not going to stop you, but I am going to warn you that it's pretty tricky business out there. So I want to move on to another subject, which is also political, but let's leave America behind for a minute. And before I get to it, because I'm gonna discuss Brexit, that vote we just saw over there across the pond. But you know, this seems to be a season for divorces, as we have been saying. Some of the Republicans, you know, want to divorce and exit the party because of Donald Trump. And that doesn't have a real name unless it's called Rexit. I think that's a movement name that's been suggested. And, of course, your Texas Republicans, this came up again at the state convention this year. It comes up periodically. They want to leave the United States. In other words, let's have Texas secede. It's not clear where they would move the state capital to, because they don't like any of the urban areas. This movement, it's called Rednexit. It has something in common with the Trump sort of philosophy, though, because they want to build a fence around Texas, not a wall, something maybe inflatable even. It would save a lot of money to do it that way. And then, of course, we have the Bernie people wanting to leave the Democratic Party. That's Alexit, I guess, is what that is. But we have Britex. That's what's been in the news lately. Now, most Americans don't really know the difference between Britain, England, the United Kingdom, any of those things. Let me first of all give you a general background. England is a country, okay? You know that. And the capital of England, that's London. So So what is Britain? Well, Britain, that is the Kingdom of England plus the Principality of Wales. And that second one, that's interesting. The Principality of Wales is the only governing body I know of that includes mammals distinct from humans that make up the entire country, Principality of Wales. So what is Great Britain? Well, now you go bigger, you expand. You have the Kingdom of England, the Principality of Wales, plus the Kingdom of Scotland. Now, a lot of you sports fans think, you've been told that about 15 years ago the kingdom in Seattle was demolished. But in fact, it was not demolished. No, it wasn't demolished. It was, it was sold. It was moved to Scotland, and the part of Scotland containing the kingdom is part of Great Britain. I don't have time to explain why the rest of Scotland isn't, but you know Scots and their whiskey. So what are the British Isles? Well, here we are. That's a whole group of the islands in Western Europe. It includes Great Britain, it includes Ireland, and includes about 5,000 more islands like the Isle of Man and the Isle of Woman. Okay, you got that so far. And then you have the United Kingdom, which is technically called the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that's who left Brexit. Now, why did they leave Brexit? Well, you think you know some of the story. I have some inside information. It's because of changes in currency. That's right, folks, changes in currency. You know, most of Europe is on 220, 240 volts, including, you know, the UK at the present time, but they're thinking of switching to the American standard, 110 to 120. And why? If Americans didn't have to buy voltage adapters for their hair dryers and electric toothbrushes when they plan a trip over to Britain or Great Britain or the British Isles, then more people would probably be touring the British Isles from America right now. So you see, there is an agenda. There is a hidden agenda that hasn't been shared with you folks yet. No, it hasn't. Anyway, what are the implications? You know, in your financial journals, you're already reading about various implications of this Brexit move, and some of them are legitimate, but in many cases, people just don't know at this point what the ultimate impact is going to be. But what about for us here? Is there an instant impact? Well, you bet there is. Because the biggest thing that's going to happen right away is they'll be shutting down the English Channel. And when they do that, that means some of my favorite TV shows aren't there for me to watch anymore. You know, I've watched every episode of The Last Pickle Farmer twice, because some of the inside jokes, I mean, I still don't get them after watching all the shows twice. But it's a highly educational program. I was looking for that next season to begin. Just like I was waiting for the next season of Downtown Abbey Road. Now that is one intriguing and highly educational show, because in that one you get to see, they have archaeologists who show you what certain landmarks look like well before they were landmarks. I really enjoyed the one about Stonehenge recently. And I especially like the one explaining what Mount Rushmore looked like. It was actually, a lake at one point, populated by Vibrio bacteria, I think. And then what's the amazing story was that they all got exported to Greater Switzerland, which they also had. Now, another favorite show I have on the English Channel is Shopping in the Isle of Wight. And, you know, white people like to shop, you know that. And that one, even though it was sponsored by Charcola, they didn't really talk about Charcola very much. They mostly talked about trinkets to take home to the wife. And then my favorite of the shows on the English Channel, These Are Not My Shoes. what can I say? It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Anyway, people are already regretting this vote, and so there's already a new movement called Correxit to say we were just kidding about that last vote. Enough politics. Let's talk about entertainment for just a minute here, because we don't have much time left. I see we have about 4 minutes. The biggest news in the entertainment world is a suit involving the Led Zeppelin song Stairway to Heaven, because the estate of Spirit's guitarist Randy California says that song was lifted from a Spirit song. And they just said, the jury just said, no, it wasn't. Stairway to Heaven is Led Zeppelin's song. But, you know, that wasn't really the only challenge. There was another challenge. You didn't hear about this, by a group called Frankie and the Fishbait. They have a song called Stairway to Helsinki. Do we have that audio? I think people would, yeah. There's a lady with a couple of poodles and $54,000, and she's got a Dodge Dart, and she's going to Morocco. And when she gets there, somebody will say, how in the hell did you get down those stairs with that suit on? And she'll say, I've always done it that way. But the people know better. They go down to the church at the end of the driveway. They say, maybe you could do this. Maybe you should do this. What are we talking about? And me, I just got myself a stairway to Helsinki. When I get there, I guess I will go down to the pawn shop, and I'll see if I can find anybody there who speaks Russian. And then if I don't find anybody who speaks Russian, I will go down to the convenience store and maybe get myself some more cigarettes, because now I have a stairway to Helsinki. Yeah, I can hear where they got it. Yes, I can. Even, by the way, even Donald Trump had a suit, and you didn't hear about this either, because he has a song called Another Brick in the Wall on the Border, which he says is where they got the idea for Stairway to Heaven, or is it Helsinki? Anyway, that's pretty entertaining news, and of course the Olympics will be entertaining this year, because the new events include swimming in a toilet. A lot of the people here on the Texas Gulf Coast have already been practicing up for that event, and another new event called doping. Doping is something the Soviets have been competing in for years, doping, but this is a free-form event where people just do whatever silly thing they want to, and the sillier the better. But you know, this year, I don't know if it can even, if anything, can quite compete with that Republican and Democratic convention stuff we were talking about earlier. So there you go. I hope you were entertained, and I hope you were educated, and I hope you were soothed by what you heard tonight. But if not, go get yourself a big can of Charcola and kick back with me as we welcome in the rest of summer 2016. And I'll be seeing all of you folks down the road a piece. All I got left in me is the Jelly Brain Rock. I get to bumping and grinding, and I just can't stop. I spend most of my so-called career
in a state of shock. I got a little to say. I can't seem to make the words rhyme. I can just barely play my guitar. Out of tune, out of time. You might think my experience dreadful. I think it's sublime. All I got left in me is a jelly brain rock.